Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is my review of Brian Banks. Brian Banks tells the story of actual, real-life NFL football player Brian Banks and his journey as he attempted to prove himself innocent of a rape charge lobbied against him while he was only 16 years old. I was really interested in this story. Obviously, I am an NFL fan. I'm loyal to my Broncos, but a football fan at large. And true stories such as this really pique my interest. Of wrongful accusations, even, nevertheless, actual wrongful sentences. So I was really interested. I didn't know much about Brian Banks as a football player, honestly. I didn't know much about him as a person, and I knew next to nothing about this case up until the pre-release of this film. And overall, I think it was a solid film, not great. So let's go ahead and talk about those positives first. Well, the story. It's really an extraordinary story. I think it's near impossible not to feel for someone like Brian Banks when you look into the actual case and what he went through. It's crazy to even see. And it's definitely a story that was ripe for a feature-length film. And the story is extremely compelling. It hooks you in. You're invested in Brian as a person and with what happens to him. Part of that is also Aldous Hodge, who plays Brian Banks in the film, does a great job. I thought his performance was really fantastic. He gives you everything you need from this character to truly believe him and believe in him and be there with him through this story. And he just sold it all. He was great. Greg Kinnear was also really good in this movie. I really thought his performance was strong, as well as Sherry Shepherd. I thought she was really good as Brian's mother. Honestly, overall, the cast across the board was really strong and made this feel like something real. Now, Morgan Freeman is included in that, and I do think he did well. However, this was clearly some sort of paycheck gig for Morgan Freeman. I mean, his part was almost blink and you'll miss it. Though a significant person in Brian's life, in the film itself, it was a very tiny role for Morgan Freeman. And I think once the story gets going, it is a really interesting, fast-paced, compelling story. Now, it takes a little bit too long to get to that point, but once we really get the ball moving in this case, in trying to move Brian's story forward, it works really, really well for me. The third act did exactly what it needed to do, and it did it very well in getting you emotionally, inspirationally. It really moved me, and that's what it needed to accomplish. Plus, they highlighted the Innocence Project and the great work that they've done. Some of these other folks that have been set free after serving sometimes upwards of 20 years under a false imprisonment. And that's astonishing, but I'm glad that they showcased not only Brian, who went on to become an NFL superstar, but also the people that are doing some great work to try to get people's wrongful sentences overturned. It's a really important story to tell, and an interesting story of a false rape accusation in the Me Too movement, but I think a needed one. This movie really kind of showcased actually both sides of this very well, and it's a brave film to be made, but a movie that needed to be made and an issue that needed to be highlighted. So what didn't work so well when it came to Brian Banks? Well, I mentioned it before, but the first act, maybe even act and a half, they drug. First of all, they tell this story as a flashback that then goes into multiple other flashbacks, and I thought that was completely unnecessary for one. Kind of meta and weird, and I did not like it, but we really take a while to get going, and when we're in the flashbacks, when we are in even him living his life at the beginning of this story, it doesn't feel like we're moving towards something. It really kind of just meanders. Also, it hints at some of the struggles to the audience, but only to a certain extent. We never get the full weight of what Brian had to go through, being a sex offender, going to prison, being in solitary confinement. There's glimpses and little shows every now and then, but I really wish they had put the audience through the ringer a little bit, and I think that final act maybe even could have been more powerful and more moving. I also think the script is a little bit dodgy. Many aspects play out in very kind of stereotypical ways. Some of this dialogue, some of the character actions. While the actors did a great job bringing the story to life visually as a script and as a screenplay, a lot of it just didn't feel natural. It felt like you were watching a retelling of an actual event, which is the case, but it would have been nice to kind of feel like you were there for the events themselves. Plus, when it comes to production, this was much more along the lines of a really good TV film rather than a feature film. That lighting was so washed out and bright. I was like, oh my gosh, the framing of the film was very like bland. Everything from a technical aspect on this movie just felt bland and blah. So you couple that with a little bit of a hokey way of storytelling, and it all just felt a little subpar from what you'd hope for in a theater experience. Plus, I think the movie really missed the mark in understanding that I think the court case and everything surrounding it was the driving force. It could have been a really compelling court type of drama rather than a little bit of a melodramatic, soapy type of drama. And if it had realized that, I think we could have focused in on the gripping story at hand, and that could have really taken over for the whole film. So overall, Brian Banks is a very compelling story that has strong performances and leaves you with the emotional impact you're hoping for, but really drops the ball on most filmmaking aspects. With saying that, I would give Brian Banks a rental. At most, this is a good matinee. The story is worth exploring, but it's certainly not worth exploring at these high theater prices. And I would say it's good home viewing. You don't need to see this in the theater by any means. So that is my review of Brian Banks. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on our latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Are you excited to see Brian Banks, or have you already seen it? If you have, let me know your thoughts either in the comment section down below or hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!